Engineers are very good at fixing things that are broken. We have alarms for when systems fail. We have dashboards for monitoring. We have incident management runbooks for solving problems when they come up in production. When a system is unstable, it has a lot of attention. It gets a lot of attention. We have all of these systems and processes in place that helps us to solve the problems that occur when things go wrong. But in my experience, the most dangerous systems are the ones that are very reliable, like too reliable. They work so well that we have stopped questioning them. And that is where problems start. Reliability has a side effect that we don't talk about very often. Um, it leads to trust. And when a system is trusted, it kind of fades into the background and becomes invisible because it works too well and people don't really pay attention anymore. In one organization I worked with in the past, we built a piece of payment infrastructure, starting from a small team. That system ended up being used by virtually all the products for that company. At some point, third party vendors were onboarded also. They were also able to use that infrastructure. It was reliable, it was trusted, it performed very well, it scaled very well. By every metric that mattered at the time, the product was it was good. It worked as it should be. Then years later, after I had left the company, there was a regulation passed by the government that required a change in the payment infrastructure that was built. Um, at face value, that change looked like a very easy, quick fix code change, but it ended up being a pain for the company. The change became extremely risky for them, not because the system was unstable, but because some decisions were taken during the development of that system that they are not understood now anymore. There were a lot of trade-offs that were made that the current owners of the system, they're not aware of that. They have no context of it. The conversations that shaped the systems that disappeared. The new teams that inherited the decisions without understanding why those decisions were made in the first place. Um, no one wanted to touch that system, not because it was fragile, but because no one understood it anymore. We usually call systems like this a legacy system. And when engineers talk about legacy systems, we talk about it as if the age of the system is the problem. But age isn't the real issue here. Legacy code is dangerous because it encodes assumptions and trade offs from a different time. It is like a contract that was made in the past, one that modern systems try to continue to enforce long after the world that they were designed for has changed, right? The code still works, but the world it was designed for has changed. These problems start when decisions are not documented, when constraints are not communicated, and when speed quietly replaces a shared understanding of the system. Modern software systems are built under pressure, pressure to ship, pressure to scale, pressure to compete, pressure to get to the market first. And under these pressures, teams don't choose the wrong solution. They choose the safest solution given what they know at the time. The problem is that the system outlives that moment. The system remembers every decision made, but people don't over time. People leave, teams reorganize, context fades, and what was once a deliberate trade-off turns into an unquestioned rule, and people just assume that that's how things are supposed to be, and not even want to question things anymore. A major part of my career has been spent working on systems that move money, real-time payment systems, tokenized payments, large-scale financial platforms used across multiple institutions. I often think if sometime in the past I wrote some code that is currently not maintainable and the correct owners are not able to fix a bug or solve a problem. Um, and that's the impact of that could be very catastrophic because the customers could lose trust in the system, and that is very hard to bring back after customers lost trust in the system. So it's very critical that we get maintainability very correct for future purposes. Over time, I've come to realize that writing code is important, but it's not the hardest part. The hardest part is building systems that will outlast everyone who built them. Better software doesn't start with better tools, it starts with better conversations, shared understanding, and clear intent, with explicit trade offs being mentioned. When those aren't shared across teams, the system may remain technically correct but be quietly accumulating risk. With experience, you stop asking the question, how do we build this? And you start asking, how would this be understood 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? That question changes everything. I would like to share a few principles I've learned from watching reliable systems quietly accumulate risk over time. The first is make assumptions visible. Every system has assumptions about scale, trust, failure modes, etc. If assumptions are documented, they don't disappear. Undocumented assumptions are the ones that surface later as surprises. So document your assumptions. Second is record intent, not just implementation. Code tells you what a system does, but intent tells you why a system does what it does. Then third is design for context decay. People will leave, teams will change, priorities will shift. This will always happen. Context would decay over time. But good systems assume that their context will fade and leave behind enough signal for future teams to reason safely. And the last point I'm going to share is treat engineering as stewardship, not ownership. You don't own the system forever. You are a temporary caretaker. Your responsibility isn't just to make it work today, but to leave it understandable for the people who come after you. These principles aren't about predicting the future. They are about acknowledging that we won't be there when the future arrives. So we design for the future when we're not there. The system I mentioned at the beginning, the one no one wanted to touch, it wasn't a failure. It did exactly what it was designed to do. The failure was that it kept making decisions long after the reasons for those decisions disappeared. The hidden risk in reliable systems is that they keep speaking for the past while the world has already moved on. Thank you.